don't think a lot of women realize this till they start training. They get better much faster than men do.
When you have a gym and you come in as a young athletic guy and one of the first things you experience is a 130-pound woman handing you your ass. It's an immediate attitude adjustment that's lasting, and it changes your whole perspective in a way that now you can be a good asset and training partner in the gym. And that has been completely transformational.
The only thing I would tell any dude is to treat us the same. Other than that, like, I don't mind getting smashed by them. I don't mind getting submitted by them. I want to be treated the same. Don't go light on me because I'm a female.
I remember there was an article that came out a few years ago where somebody was writing about how women can't do jiu-jitsu, and I just thought to myself, number one, he obviously doesn't know the sport well because he's still talking about attributes as opposed to what he should be talking about. But set that aside, he hasn't had the experience, because my experience has been the exact opposite.
Jiu-jitsu is an emotional thing. People don't realize that, and it's frustrating to have to roll with people a lot bigger than you.
Are they going to have trouble because they're smaller and weaker against somebody bigger and stronger? Of course. And their technique is going to have to be that much better to overcome and compensate for that extra power and speed of the other animal that they're having to deal with, of course. But that has nothing to do with whether or not they're getting technically superior at jiu-jitsu at a faster rate, and they just do.
In terms of strength and speed, you're almost always at a disadvantage. So your timing and your technique has to be perfect.
Yeah.
You don't have the margin for error that a man has.
I don't want to be too sexist, but the women are better students, partly because they have to be, because they don't have the same attribute level oftentimes that some of the guys do. They're not as big, they don't have the strength, and so when they pull something off, it's going to be with jiu-jitsu.
What's it like to be a woman in jiu-jitsu?
It's interesting. Most people, I've realized our gym is really unique in that women are very much encouraged and assisted to continue in jiu-jitsu, and that's not true. I don't think in all gyms it can be harder. I think that we are given honest roles, so people roll real with us, but we have a lot of great training partners that will be careful not to smash us, so we can get a good honest roll from them and test our jiu-jitsu, but they're not necessarily rolling with all of their strength and speed.
Before you step on the mat, like male or female, you have to just kind of like shed everything, and you're just a body. You're a training partner, you're a teammate, versus like thinking specifically about like I'm a male or I'm a female.
I think the moment when I decided I wanted to start jiu-jitsu was when I watched Coach Amanda Diggins, her Ironman, and it was just like kind of a surreal experience. It was really amazing. To watch her, she was one of the smallest people in the room, and she moved so gracefully. Her movements were so beautiful, and I was really drawn to it. And I thought, this could be something fun. And, here I am 2.5 years later.
I'm a black belt here at Straight Blast Gym, and I've been training since August of 2009.
I actually started training jiu-jitsu when we opened the gym in Kalispell, so December 2008.
I've been training for 2 years and 3 months, and I'm a new blue belt.
I'm 15 years old and have been training for 10 years, and I'm currently a blue belt.
I started very late, I started jiu-jitsu when I was 51.
I have been training for 5 years now, and I am a brown belt.
So I am a 13-year white belt at this point. That's actually how Matt and I first met, was through jiu-jitsu. I went to a seminar that he had in Iceland. And I first started training because a bunch of my guy friends found a video from Matt and brought him in for a seminar and started doing jiu-jitsu.
And I started training specifically because we opened the gym and we decided to start a kids program because Travis felt it was important for our kids to train. And I said, yeah, that makes sense to me, I guess. And he said, well, we probably better get you a gi.
So your first memory, you remember?
Yeah, I remember getting a gi and being so excited because I was like, wow, these are some pretty legit pajamas.
Basically, Travis gave me a cardboard box mixed with a burlap bag and said, wear this. And by the way, it's an organic fiber that's never been dyed or whatever, so it's this like putrid shade of beige, and I'm going to put a white belt on you on top of it.
Were you able to move your arms at least?
Yeah, I could move all over the place, and no one knew how I was moving because it was a freaking bag. So anyway.
And so then I went to my first class, and it was pretty small, but I remember like I was the littlest one in there.
Really?
Even though like my brothers and I were pretty close in size, I still remember feeling really small.
Why?
I don't know.
That's just your perception.
Yeah, I was just like, wow, everyone is giants. What am I doing here?
The first time I got on the mat was for one of my Coach Amanda's classes.
Okay.
And honestly, my first class, a lot of people will tell you that they fell in love with jiu-jitsu instantly. I was just kind of neutral towards it. I thought like this was a kind of cool experience, but I didn't fall in love with it for a while.
Had come into the gym. I used to work around the corner at the fish store, and I would walk past this place, and yeah, I thought everyone in here was doing karate or some sort of, I don't know, martial art, and I figured, I was like, I should probably do karate as well. And then I came in and I talked to Chris Stearns, and he was super pumped on having, you know, more females come into the gym and train. So I was like, yeah, I'll come in and try a class.
I can remember when Amanda first started attending SBG, I don't know how many years ago that was. I was lucky enough to be her first jiu-jitsu coach, which looking back on it now was really a great privilege. When she first started, she was really shy and fairly reserved, and it was interesting because she was always a great student. She was always somebody who was had a lot of great questions and was always interested in how jiu-jitsu worked.
The first class I tried was with Coach Kane. I don't necessarily remember what he taught, but I remember after the class was over, he's like, all right, go ahead and grab a partner and roll. I had no idea what that meant, but I rolled, and I remember getting armbarred and triangled a bunch. I was super excited.
What about it?
It seemed like a really cool like body puzzle to figure out. I quit my job. I quit going to school. I didn't want to do anything like but this.
In many ways, her progression from white belt to blue belt was fairly unremarkable, and she moved pretty quickly, but maybe on the high end of average.
I was most likely like a spaz, like trying to use like as much, I don't know, probably, yeah, you'd have to ask everyone. I mean, I think every, white belt or beginner doesn't realize like how much attributes versus like technique they're actually using, so yeah, I was probably like a wild animal.
That's terrifying, actually.
I mean, I'm still pretty competitive, but I remember back then being really competitive and a lot more stubborn and probably didn't want to tap. And it's funny because it's like we talk about try not to have like very much ego, but I remember having like quite a bit of ego because I didn't understand like what jiu-jitsu really was and how it would affect me kind of in the long run. So because I'm such a stubborn individual, I came back and I was like, I'm gonna figure this out and I'm gonna armbar everyone else that armbarred me. So.
How long did that take?
I don't know, a few months.
And once Amanda got blue belt, something happened in her game or her understanding.
I feel at purple belt, I finally learned how to pass the guard. I remember Coach Preet came and did a whole guard passing seminar, and all of a sudden I'm like, I understand now. Like I can feel more comfortable playing on top and passing.
I started training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because of my adolescent interventionist job. So I go around the country and I transport troubled adolescents at risk, and I take them from their beds, very comfortable at 3 o'clock in the morning, and they don't want to go to the aforementioned program. So Jiu-Jitsu was a way to counteract that stress. It was a way to be confident and have an invisible armor when I went into the bedroom, and was able to extract and thus be a catalyst for someone to, you know, heck, maybe they would start training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I always try to talk to the women that I escort and kind of let them know that martial arts is a fantastic way to kind of get back into being yourself, finding yourself.
So I put a gi on, stepped on the mat, and pretty soon I found myself training because I was interested in it, training because I wanted to, training because I was learning not only the skill, but I was also learning something about myself. And I wasn't exactly satisfied with what I was seeing. I wasn't exactly satisfied with what the training was revealing to me. And so that's when I knew I needed to train more. And I guess in the back of my mind, it was something that I was interested in, but to be honest, I never thought it was a possibility, because up to that point, the only women that I knew who trained they weren't, let's put it this way, they weren't 33-year-old mothers of 4. The only women I knew who trained were, in my book, just young athletic badasses who also, and no offense to anyone who falls in this category of people who trained at that time, but I felt like a lot of those women also were trying to prove something to themselves or prove something to the world. And I didn't fall in that category of women that I knew who were training at that time.
And the reason I got back into it this last year was because I have PTSD. I would have a really hard time maintaining boundaries. I would have a really hard time if people came too close to me. I found it uncomfortable to be touched. If people approached me too quickly, I couldn't make eye contact. And I just couldn't maintain the space around myself. So I started doing jiu-jitsu because I wanted to overcome that. I wanted to be stronger. I wanted to, not have people be able to walk into my space and make me feel vulnerable and scared and shut down to the point where I couldn't look them in the eye. I wanted to know that I could defend myself. And most of all, I just wanted to find relief from, that feeling of vulnerability.
Or sometimes guys can sort of ignore good technical advice and then make it work by sheer strength or size. The women can't do that by and large, especially if they're rolling with the bigger guys. And so I find that coachability is one of the places where it really shows.
What I see from beginner females and beginner males, males tend to think more with their upper body, and then you get females that tend to think more with their lower body. What a shock, right?
And the adults make me constantly strive to improve, because I need to always be looking to overcome the weight difference and the strength difference.
My biggest challenge is being a 125-pound woman.
Yeah.
First of all, because there's not a lot of women. It is better today than it was when I started 5 years ago.
The first time that I saw Anik, and turned to someone that I was with, one of the employees, the coaches, and I said, "Who's that?"
Okay.
I started training when I moved to US, and there was only Tiffany that was training when I started. So she was pretty much my person to train with, but she had probably like 15 pounds, between 40 and 50 pounds on me. So that's a big difference. And then I'm short, and then most people are heavier and taller. So it's a good thing because it makes me more technical, because I have to find the leverage and all the answers, because I can't rely on my strength because I have no strength.
There are a lot of challenges in being a teenage girl in a mixed martial arts jiu-jitsu gym. One of the big challenges for Ella is finding training partners. in comp team. Usually everybody outweighs her by 50, 60, 70 pounds. You know, if she's lucky, there's one or two other female athletes, and it's pretty difficult, and sometimes she can be frustrated because she feels like the bigger, older athletes don't always give her enough game. She sometimes feels like
enough space for her to.
They're not giving her enough of a tough time in a roll.
Gotcha. They're being. Okay.
Yeah, you know, people try to be kind and generous to people who are smaller and younger, and Ella's really competitive, and she wants people to go hard, and she feels like, I want people to give me a really good game because I'm trying to get better at jiu-jitsu, and sometimes that can be quite frustrating, and so it's interesting for me to see that perspective because being a bigger, older guy, I don't have that problem at all, and so it's actually helped me to be a better teacher to have a daughter who's, you know, a smaller, younger person, so I could better understand what that perspective is like.
Yes, I'm bigger and stronger than Kate or Vicky, who's a 40-something mother of two, but she's a purple belt, and her jiu-jitsu is strong. And if I grapple her like a 200-something black belt, you know, had a black belt for almost 9 years, almost 20 years of jiu-jitsu experience, if I grapple her like that, then who gets anything out of that? She certainly doesn't. Likely she gets hurt. But honestly, if I grapple a smaller, weaker, less experienced male in my gym like that, then what are they going to get out of it either?
It can sometimes be a tough balance to understand if you're rolling with somebody who maybe you got 30, 40 pounds on, maybe there's a big age difference or something else. How do you give them an honest roll where it's not a condescending roll? And you know, some of the answer is when I have that situation where I'm way heavier or way more experienced, I have to keep checking myself and saying, is this jiu-jitsu? What I'm doing, is this jiu-jitsu? And if the answer is yes, then I'm going to keep going. And by doing that, it helps me to understand that, you know, I'm smashing, I'm putting them in an uncomfortable place, but if I'm doing it with pure jiu-jitsu, then in the end, it's going to be better for them and for me. You know, if I'm doing something that's really super playful, where my heart and my head is halfway in it because I outweigh them by 50 pounds and the game is really easy, and I find my mind wandering off someplace else, then I'm not really giving them an honest game, and fairly it's kind of condescending. So, you know, I have to be 100% focused and present, and in some ways it's actually a more difficult and a better jiu-jitsu role because in that scenario I have to work harder to be constantly present to make sure that everything I'm doing is pure, beautiful jiu-jitsu. And in that, rolling with people who are way smaller or that big age difference, it can become a good experience for me as well as them.
When I first started, there was only like one or two other women training or that I had actually been able to roll with. It was just all dudes, and so I don't remember like specifically like complaining about like, oh, this person is bigger than me, or I can't do this because I'm a woman, or because I can't bench press someone, or any of that. It was just like you just showed up and you trained and you got better and you fixed your mistakes, and I didn't feel like treated any differently because I was a woman. So none of that stuff really bothered me.
We created an environment and a culture where where you learn how to grapple with all types. So, but I'm a bigger, stronger guy with lots of experience. So I grapple according to the person that's on the mat with me. And if I grapple with Vicky and I don't smush her, or one of my other girls like Kelsey or Kate, if I grapple with them and allow them to grapple, then I don't necessarily know if they have to compensate.
I love jiu-jitsu so much. Like I didn't sign up here at the gym to like get a black belt. Like that wasn't something that I hadn't really like thought of for a long time. It was just like you just show up and train and you enjoy it, and then you try to get better, and then all of a sudden it's like you're kind of I'm being Ironman and kind of handed a black belt.
I can remember Amanda's brown belt Ironman, and she was completely in surprise when Matt called her onto the mat to get her brown belt. In fact, I saw her looking over at Matt like, really? Are you sure you want to do this? And almost like, I'm not ready for this and I don't want it. And but you know, she was competing at a world-class level then, and she was easily at brown belt or above. And honestly, when she got her brown belt, you could have skipped her right over to black belt and put one on, and nobody would have blinked an eye. So her level of her game was just crazy good at that point. And that's the reason why her brown belt was so short, is that she was already at a really high level by the time she got it. And you know, from brown to black belt for her was just getting some competitions in, doing some really highly competitive rolls at the gym, and it was just kind of honing the edge of that blade a little bit.
I didn't feel ready for my black belt. Yeah, it's just I felt like it for me like came too soon. I felt like I didn't get enough like time at brown belts. I wanted to compete a little bit more, because all of a sudden it's like you're a black belt and you get dipped in with all of these people that have, some of them have been competing forever, and then you get, some newer black belts, and so that was a little nerve-wracking at first.
One day in comp team practice, and comp team practice can be a pretty tough rolls, and we're rolling, and then I get a chance to roll with Amanda, and after about the first 30 seconds of the roll, I started to have this realization come on that I'm feeling and seeing some jiu-jitsu that I just, unlike anything I had seen before, and it wasn't anything that I taught her.
I don't know. It's obviously it was up to Coach Matt. I mean, I still feel really, really new at jiu-jitsu, and each year I feel like trying to correct some mistakes and get better at like the fundamentals, and then adding pieces.
And the way she was responding to my body movements in my jiu-jitsu was just, it was well beyond both my understanding and my imagination, honestly. And at that point I knew that her game had just leapfrogged mine by a long shot. And it was a really cool moment, because I was her first jiu-jitsu coach, and I knew her as white belt when I was black belt, and she went through all the colored belt ranks and skyrocketed beyond me.
I haven't rolled with some of these like Michelle Nicolini or Mackenzie Dern or any of these people, but I rolled with a lot of female black belts, and there are only two so far that I will say. That's Amanda and Heejin Lee, my black belt, first and only Korean woman black belt. The biggest compliment I could pay to both of them, and Amanda right now, and this is the God's truth, is that I do not think of rolling with Amanda like rolling with a woman. I think I'm rolling with a person who's smaller, a little bit smaller, and I only give her the same breaks and sort of let-ups that I would give a male black belt her size, because it doesn't do me any good to smash a really technical male black belt when I'm 50 pounds heavier. Why am I going to do that? It doesn't help him, it doesn't help me. So that's the real compliment. When I'm rolling with Amanda, I know if I make a mistake, I'm going to get caught. And I know the only thing that's different about us is I've trained a little bit longer, but besides that, it's nothing to do with gender. Her physical, her emotional game is just good, rock solid jiu-jitsu, and I'm just playing jiu-jitsu with her. And and the last compliment I'll give her, and this is not something I say about everyone good male or female either, is I love rolling with her. So there are people who are good, there are people who make me better, but I hate rolling with them. I only do it like taking really bitter medicine. It's like, okay, I got to do this once a week to keep this sickness away or keep myself strong. But I'd roll with Amanda every day, twice a day. Neither of us would get hurt. Both of us would get better, and that's maybe the highest compliment I could pay her or any practitioner.
What was it like rolling with Frankel? Because I got a bunch of...
That day was super f***ed up, because I had just gotten back from Europe, and I was exhausted, and I really didn't want to roll. But I did anyway, because it's Frankel, and you never say no to that. So that was a very challenging, mental day to, keep my shit together. I remember the first time rolling with him, I was a purple belt. I had just gotten off of work. I had no idea who he was. And I remember rolling with him, and he just f***ed me up. And I was like, I'm gonna throw my belt down the toilet. And yeah, I was like, who is this guy? And I like made excuses. I was like, it's because I was tired and blah 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 and all these things.
You did.
Yeah. And then I rolled with him again, and he f***ed me up again. And I was like, I guess this guy's legit. He's like some CIA secret agent from South Korea coming to visit. But then like each year I get to roll with him because he comes or we visit or whatever it is, and I figure out how to roll with him better or for myself, and I think and for him, and become a better training partner, and realize like it's not a competition. Yeah. It should be like one of the greatest learning experiences, especially rolling with someone like at that caliber that has so much information to give, and that's that kind of that whole. It's like if he's talking, then you need to be listening.
Because of the weight difference and because of the age difference and size difference and strength difference, it's I find it's a very emotional journey for me because I'm constantly I constantly have feelings of, wow, this person's going really hard. Or this person is using too much strength. And not to blame my training partners, I think some of that is me just using that as an excuse. I really do. But I constantly get kind of, I get these feelings of frustration with my game that I'm not able to overcome the weight difference and that I'm not able to compensate for that. And I don't want to speak to anyone else's journey, but I think that particularly has made my journey especially slightly more difficult.
My biggest challenge in training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is myself, is getting over that fear. I'll say the biggest challenge actually boils down to comparison. We have some beastly women at SBG Athens, and just from the other SBG ladies that I have encountered, at first I found it very difficult to not compare myself to others' games, to others' movements, to how smooth they were. And with time, it's become easier to not only get over the barriers that I set myself and, in a mentality of, oh, I'm not good enough and things of that nature. I'm able to now work on my game.
I think the biggest flaw in my game is not a particular technique or a particular position. It's more that it's hard for me to deal with the weight difference, and particularly I'm not very good, I think, at applying weight and pressure into my opponent.
What are your thoughts on a fairly common hurdle for women in jiu-jitsu being assertive as players?
I definitely think that is a common problem, and I think it's the most obvious one.
I don't think it's unfair to say that women in general in society are not nearly as assertive as men. I know that I've had conversations with my own wife about apologizing for things or saying sorry for things that don't require an apology, don't require a sorry. And she's quiet and introverted to some degree and was raised in such a way that to her it's almost like verbal vomit. And I've talked to her about it, and it's something I don't want my daughter to grow up and learn.
I don't know. I think sometimes I say it's hard for me to apply a really smashy top game because of the weight difference, but I think honestly that's partially me just making an excuse. I think I need to, I don't know, I think it's not a part of my game that I've worked too much because I think as a smaller person I've kind of adopted a very flowy game, whereas I'd like to develop a very smashy pressure passing game because I think particularly with my style of passing that's going to complement it a lot more, and so I think that's where I'm heading in my game. That's what I want to improve on.
I don't know that it matters why that is the case. I don't know if it matters that it is a genetic adaptation or that it's a learned behavior, regardless of where that comes from. I think it's important for my own daughter, my wife, all the other girls that are in my kids jiu-jitsu program here, is to learn that they are valuable, that they are important, that they're worth defending, and ultimately they need to be the first person who understands their value, and they need to be the first person who stands up for themselves. The person across from you, when they touch hands with you, they're saying, hey, let's compete against each other, let's be competitive. And I think it's only fair and honest to the person across from you that you give them your best, that you do your best, that you try your hardest. And in the case of jiu-jitsu, what does that mean? Well, that means I'm trying to submit you. So that's kind of my take on it. I think the most important thing that we can do is empower women and the girls in our programs to understand that when they're being assertive, what they're really doing is they're saying, hey, I'm valuable, I'm worth it. And that'd be my main advice to them.
As a grappler, as a female grappler, that's what you do. You grapple hard and you get after it. So I don't see that being an issue here, but I can see that being an issue in places where a female grappler may not assert themselves on the mat, assert their dominance on the mat. And it's up to us as coaches to let them know that, yeah, we're getting after this. Your goal is to make the other person uncomfortable.
You know, there's a difference between like using your weight and then using your attributes or using your strength. So you can't help as to how much you weigh, right? And I'm going to use as much of my 140, 150 pound body to try and smash you as possible.
That's
right?
the whole point, right?
Yeah, that's the whole point. So, and in jiu-jitsu, only one person can be comfortable at a time.
And if you're making them uncomfortable, then keep after it. And there's no reason to apologize for that. If anything, they should be telling, your training partner should be saying thank you because you're forcing me to get better at jiu-jitsu. You're putting me in a bad place. I need to escape. I need to better my own position. And if you don't put me there, then you're not helping me.
When I would watch her roll, she was always scared to put pressure on somebody else. And when she would get top, I would see her sometimes apologize if she put a little too much shoulder in or something else. And even if she'd get a submission, the first thing she always did after the other person tapped is she would say, "Oh, are you okay? Are you okay?" And she was, you know, that's just who Amanda. That's still who she is, and that's who she was back then. And my terrible advice to her was, Amanda, you have to toughen up if you're going to do jiu-jitsu, and really jiu-jitsu requires you to be a little more of an asshole. And I kept telling her, find your inner asshole, Amanda. And she did not listen to my advice, and she became a world champion, and I'm thankful that she didn't. In her personal game, she learned to live with the fact that in jiu-jitsu, the other person sometimes has to be fairly uncomfortable, and she's perfectly okay with executing jiu-jitsu now in a way that the other person is fairly uncomfortable.
Paul Sharp, SBG black belt, has given me the name of Abu Dhabi Kate. Apparently I go a little hard in the paint.
You know that if you're going to go with Kate, that you're going to get a match. But that's not to say she rolls rough, which is sort of how she started. She came here from another gym, having trained for, I don't know, maybe a year or so at a gym with a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program that pales in comparison. And over time, she sort of got fed up with what was going on over there. And her boyfriend Lee was here, and she came here. So in the beginning, her style or her grappling was not just aggressive, but it wasn't very technical. I don't necessarily know if she was ever taught that that's not the way you get better at technical jiu-jitsu.
That actually was a pivotal moment in my training because I realized, I didn't think I was going that hard. I felt like I needed to compensate, and I felt like I needed to be fast and be there quick, otherwise I would fail.
Over time, being in a place that that preaches that pretty much day in and day out. You know, technique over all things, because when all things are equal, technique wins. So over time, her game is smoothed out. Her fundamentals of her jiu-jitsu have started to come through.
But in failing, that's where learning has come about.
But it's more technical now than it was when she started. And with that has made her, she has become a much better grappler. I'm proud of her having taken those steps in her journey.
15 or 16 years ago when I was in Los Angeles getting my black belt, I trained with one of the early American black belt females who was down there. I won't name her name, but she would not roll with men at all. And when I talked to her about it, I talked to my coach, the reason was she was always getting hurt. So, you know, that first generation of men that she was coming from did not want to tap to a woman or even be put in a bad position by a woman. So it became a safety thing.
For a long time, in the beginning, especially, you know, in the beginning, Jiu-Jitsu world is men's world. So I was, a lot of time I was ignored, or, you know, people make a comment.
So if you have any, just other detail, if you have a question, please come to me. And I don't want to be, you know, choked by girl, you know, something like that.
So the first generation of women that came into jiu-jitsu, they had to be pretty gnarly. Some of the most technical jiu-jitsu players in the world right now are women. Some of the most technical black belts in our organization are women. Some of the best competitors in our organization are women.
I think everyone in jiu-jitsu has a moment where they just think they want to quit.
For like a whole year, when I was about 9, I would have like anxiety attacks mat side. Right before I stepped on the mat, I would just sob.
My first competition was when I had just been promoted. I'd been a blue belt for about 3 weeks, and I got moved up 3 weight classes. And I got thrown in right with the Sharks, my first competition. He's, you know, huge woman who had been training for a lot longer than I had. And I lost every match. I got tapped out. And I did cry. I did cry a lot.
And my loving mother just shoved me in there. You'll be fine. And in the moment, I thought, like, why are you doing this to me? Like, I obviously don't want to go out here. Like, it's terrifying.
Defense first.
I was just shocked at how intense it was. I had done comp team prior to competing, and I thought that I had experienced tough roles, but that's nothing compared to competition.
I don't know if it was the people, the match itself, the competitiveness.
Protect your arms, Ella. Protect your arms.
These women, I didn't have a chance to work my game at all. I don't think I had too strong of a game at that point, but I think they just had so much of a weight disadvantage. I just couldn't work anything, and so I, ended up on bottom, trying to defend the whole time, and I just got tapped.
I was like excited to compete, like, oh yeah, we have a competition coming up. And then, hey, we're at the venue, but then like 5 seconds they're like, you're up next. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
What made you kind of go back?
Right after that first competition, I remember as soon as I got home, I was planning for the next competition because I wanted to prove myself, because I knew that given the chance, I could win and I could succeed in competition.
But in the end, so thankful that she shoved me out there, because I would have regretted going all this way and then doing nothing. Because what, you're a little scared?
So I was right back to it, and I knew I had to try. And it sucked. I did kind of want to, throw my belt on the ground and walk away. But I knew I couldn't, because I was better than that, and I could do better than that.
And that would haunt you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Finish that, Ella. There you go. Stay on top. Don't let her up. Don't let her up. Stay on top, Ella. Stay on top. Hips in. Take her down. Get on top. There you go. Get that pass. You need some points. Knee ride. Knee ride or mount. Get some points.
I want to be that black belt adult middleweight world champ.
Nice.
I'm doing the world championships this June.
Okay.
Yeah, it is huge.
What are you doing to prepare for it?
Training.
Yeah.
Yeah, training, lifting, exercising. This is So the biggest hurdle, I remember going down to the World Championships at Blue Belt for the very first time. So I competed locally as often as possible and did really well. And then going to the World Championships, like my first match, I ended up getting like judo tossed, pulled closed guard, and held closed guard for 6 minutes while like all of my coaches were just yelling at me to open up my guard. But I was so nervous and scared, and I was like, I have this big Mongolian woman on top of me. I'm a blue belt. I'm just gonna hold my closed guard. And then I lost, of course. I'm crying. I just keep crying, and I'm just like super pissed. And then that's the first time I meet Coach Chris Howder, and he's just like, "You blue belt girl," and he's like, "You remember this. You remember how bad this shitty feeling feels, and you remember it for the rest of your life." And I just continue crying. I was like, "Who the is this person?" And he's like, now he's like Grandpa Howder. And now I'll like always remember that shitty feeling. And nothing has ever, felt as worse. So.
See, your mom didn't let you give in, right?
No.
To your own worst.
Yeah.
You would have hated yourself, right?
I would have been so disappointed and upset if she didn't push me out there and tell me to go.
So how did you do on those matches? Were you able to compete?
Yeah. Once I was out there and I shook hands, I'm like, all right, back on the mats. But there's just that like in between moment where it's like, I can't do this.
Okay. And then did that eventually went away?
Yeah, eventually my anxiety went away. Like I said, it was weird. It was just this one year when I was like 8 or 9 and I just couldn't do it. I would get up to the mat and then just like freeze.
Oh, yeah. God.
And I'm
do you remember, was there a specific thing that got you over it or just went away?
There was nothing specifically that helped me get over this anxiety. I don't know, I remember it being gone and thinking like, this is okay. At one tournament, I was just like, my mom said, think happy thoughts. Think happy thoughts. I was like, all right, chocolate.
Did it help?
Yeah, we were at a tournament in Las Vegas, and I was singing to myself.
What song were you singing?
I was singing, well, it wasn't even a song. It was just my own little mix. I was like, chocolate, chocolate. We're going to eat some chocolate.
You gotta grab
chocolate,
that
chocolate. We're going to eat some chocolate after this.
You gotta bust that thing. Get your kicks on the street. It's a rat-a-tat-a, 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 holla. Rat-a-tat-a, 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 holla.
I don't remember being upset too much until I was like a purple belt. And I remember like one specific match that I had with this girl at a Naga, and Stella was actually there too. And I remember losing by like 1 point because of some rule and being like super pissed and like upset.
Angelica seems to have won 2-1 on advantages. Let's see for the official result. Yeah, 2-1 on advantages. Angelica Galval takes the gold medal in the female black belt middleweight division.
And then I have this kid come up to me, Stella, right? She's like, just this like sweet little girl, and she competes all the time, and like I'm crying because I'm a big baby and I lost. And she's like, hey, like it's not a big deal. And I'm like, what the f? I got this kid coming up to me telling me it's not a big deal, but I was like, it's not a big deal. Like, people lose all the time. Like I have a very high standard of how like I should perform, and then if that doesn't happen, I feel like I'm disappointing my coaches, or I'm disappointing myself or my students or whoever it is. And I understand that now, like that doesn't matter. Like my coaches aren't going to see me any different if I win or lose, right?
The biggest thing that I wish that I'd known about jiu-jitsu when I first started was that it doesn't have to be a negative sense of competition. So it can be a playful expression. It can be a way of learning without, what?
That's okay.
Yeah, you can take it lightly. It doesn't have to be taken super seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
How many people struggle with that?
Yeah, so.
Right? How long did that take for you to realize that?
It was actually kind of nice coming back in as a white belt and knowing that I was a white belt and I wasn't expected to, perform in any sort of way on the mat. I could just go there and just learn, and if I lost, it didn't really matter. And sort of just getting that pedestal out of the way, that really made a huge difference.
I've been coaching jiu-jitsu at Straight Blast Gym probably pretty close to 15 years, so quite a while, almost since the beginning of my journey at the gym. And I can honestly tell you that the biggest differentiator between our training when we first started and what's going on now at the gym has been the inclusion of women into the gym. And in a real way, it's probably the thing that's had the biggest impact on what's going on at this gym.
How so?
Well, when we first started, there weren't any women on the mat, and when women would come into the gym, they wouldn't stay long and they would go away. And some people would attribute that to women aren't as strong as men, or they couldn't hack the training. And what we come to find out, it's because women don't put up with as much bullshit as men do. And if the training is not efficient, if the training is unnecessarily brutal or rough, then they're going to go away. And when we started fixing our training methods, and we did things like introducing a beginner's program to help ease people into jiu-jitsu, all of a sudden we started seeing more and more women show up, and it completely transformed this gym in a way that I didn't know could happen.
What do women bring to the tribe?
They bring our better half. They bring grace. I remember one of my favorite writers, of course, Christopher Hitchens. And someone asked Christopher Hitchens what was a trait he most admired in a woman, and he said their ability to think like a man. And so they said, well, what's the trait you most admire in a man? And he said their ability to think like a woman. And I agree completely with that. The
testosterone level immediately dropped quite a bit. Before, it wouldn't be unusual for, during an open roll, for a little bit of heated exchange to show up where a roll would escalate and then, people would get pretty hot. Now I haven't seen that in years, not even once. I wouldn't even think about that as a possibility. And women demand better coaching. They really do.
Give me some specifics about that. That's interesting.
Well, we used to have, and I held on really strong to this philosophy that at SBG you spar on day one, where you would come in and you'd spar right away, and I was really proud of that. I thought that made us tough or unique or better. And for women, they would come in and you get 180, 190, 200 pound sweaty guy crushing you down from the top, and they would go away, and rightfully so. They should go away because there's no jiu-jitsu to learn in that, especially if you don't have enough experience to know what to do. And once we introduced a introductory program and we taught people how to do jiu-jitsu in terms of posture and pressure and escapes and all the different positions before we even give them a chance to have that experience.
Before I started training jiu-jitsu, I was really oblivious to the mental aspect of it. And jiu-jitsu takes so much heart and so much dedication and perseverance. And you know, I struggle every day with fixing my mentality, especially in competition, especially, you know, rolling with people bigger than me. It takes a lot to kind of push through, even, you know, though you're losing all your matches or you feel like you're doing terrible. You have to push through, and you have to, you know, commit to bettering yourself. And yeah, you know, I wish I'd have known that commitment before I started training jiu-jitsu. Not to say that, you know, I wouldn't be training if I knew that, but I would have liked to, you know, maybe have prepared myself for that a bit.
There's no preparing.
Okay. My biggest challenge in training is time management. That's it.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. Right?
Absolutely.
So how do you do it?
First of all, I lower my expectation.
Give me an example before we move on.
Okay.
Lower, because that's a huge thing, right?
Right.
And kind of flesh that out. What do you mean by that?
Well, understand, like, you know, I've got big shoes to fill, right? There's the Amanda Diggins of the world. There's Leah Taylors of the world. Like, there's all these phenomenal. There's Lily. I mean, there's all these phenomenal women who have left these enormous shoes for me to fill, and they're all black belts. They're all amazing. Even off of the mat, they're amazing women. And so in some ways, I feel like I need to measure up to that. And if I'm going to measure up to that, how can I measure up to that? Well, I have to train. But the truth is that lowering that standard or lowering that expectation for me has meant it's okay for it to take me 5 years to get a blue belt. Not that it's about the belt chasing, but if it takes me 5 years and I'm on a slow and steady pace, that's okay. That's okay.
You're saying that now, but was
It's
it
totally
always,
fine.
Yeah. Was there a moment where that clicked, or was that?
Yeah, it was.
What was going on?
The moment that clicked was this morning. True story. And it clicked about a month ago, and it clicked about a month before that, and it clicked about a month before that. So this is really the second tactic, is that I allow myself to constantly revisit and constantly ask the question, how am I doing? Am I doing what I want to be doing? Am I really living out the life that is right for me?
That's awesome.
And it's a process, and it's a process that has to recycle and repeat and recycle and repeat.
That is huge, because I think people have this misconception that it's this one aha moment.
No, it's never one aha moment. For me, the journey is just a constant questioning. You know,
I love that. It's this, never-ending call to be mindful.
Right. Poke your eyeballs out, because you're basically asking yourself the same question every damn day.
Well, but that's realistic. That's real.
No, it's real. It's absolutely real.
That's a real way to succeed.
I think women that start out and go to an intelligence school, an SBG school as an example, where the coaches are smart and know what they're doing, they're going to find out right away, hey, number one, I can get good at this. Number two, as I get good at this, I'm going to feel empowered in a way that I've never felt before, because I don't think most women think of themselves as being able to fight or being able to deal with another animal who's an aggressive animal. I think the only time it probably crosses many women's mind is if they have to think about defending their kids. But outside having to think about defending their kids, it's not an issue I don't think, on many young women's minds the way it is with young men.
I think that I have more confidence, more security, more peace, and more tools for dealing with the challenges that I meet on the mat, in my life, and in my head.
Jiu-Jitsu has made me stronger. Not necessarily physically. I think Jiu-Jitsu has strengthened my mentality. I've forced myself to commit to things, to, stick with things, to persevere. And I really appreciate that so much. It's one of my the biggest strengths for me, and one of the biggest character traits that I'm proud of. Because jiu-jitsu forces you to go through so much stuff, and just to overcome that, I'm happy with that so much.
How do you think it's impacted your life? What do you think it's given you as a person?
That's kind of a big question.
It's a huge question.
I
Take your
mean,
time.
because jiu-jitsu has been part of my life for almost as long as I can remember. Actually, I don't remember life before jiu-jitsu, only the things I've heard from what I was like. There's not really a simple way to explain this. Jiu-jitsu has done so much for me. I mean, there's the typical, yeah, it's built my confidence, but I've always had some sort of confidence. But if we dive into that confidence, I see that there's teenage girls in my grade who don't have the same experience that I do. I mean, I guess I want to put this into terms of self-defense and self-respect. It just sounds like stereotypical or something like that, or but really, I walk through the halls of my high school and I see these young women and they're slunched over, and even these popular girls, and they're afraid of what people will think of them, or afraid of how they'll be treated. And I walk through the halls like Conor McGregor. Yeah. I'm like, don't poke me, I'll throw you.
Speaking broadly on a curve, and there's going to be men and women on all variation, but speaking broadly, women come to this activity of what we do with less ego than men do. And as a consequence, what happens is, and I don't think a lot of women realize this till they start training, they get better much faster than men do. Now, they're not doing that because they have more muscle tissue or more fast twitch muscle fibers or anything. They're doing that because they can shelf their ego better than men can in this particular activity, because I think they come with less expectations of having to be good at this.
You should be thankful, I think, to roll with people bigger than you, because they give you such a challenge and they force you to work a lot harder. I think if I was rolling only with teens, and if I was teens my size, and if I was getting pretty easy rolls from them, I don't think I would be where I am. I don't think I would be mentally this tough. I don't think my game would have progressed enough.
One of the greatest joys in my life has been watching my daughter's jiu-jitsu journey. It's starting to water up a little bit already just thinking about it, because it's been such a profound and wonderful thing to experience. When you can watch someone that you love and care for grow so substantially in such a short period of time. I watched my daughter go from a really shy, reserved person to watching her. I was sitting on the side of the mat one day last week watching her teaching a teens jiu-jitsu class, and here she is in a class for a dozen or so teenagers, and she was perfectly in charge of that class. Her voice was clear. And she was teaching a really great class with a beautiful command of jiu-jitsu and coaching. And to see that transformation and that journey is, it's really an amazing thing. And to know that that experience is available for young people in jiu-jitsu, and that this gym is part of helping to foster that. It's just been a really great experience.
Coach Leah again. I wanted to talk a little bit about why I continue to do jiu-jitsu, why it kind of grabbed onto me so much. Because it's been about 9 years now, and I've had some injuries. There's definitely been some reasons and some times that I've considered leaving. Was it worth it?
Real careful. I gotta get my C6.
And I've always ended up coming back, and I think the community is the thing that has kept me so involved in part. Met some of my best friends. I've had so much help from the community at large, personally and professionally, and that's something that you can't really replace. forge relationships with people you roll with that are different from any others that I've had in terms of friendship. You sweat together and you work and you beat each other up, sometimes punch each other in the face, and then you're good friends afterwards, and that's an awesome feeling. It's one of the few things that I found where I can push myself 100% physically to the breaking point sometimes. As far as I can go. I've always been interested in trying to find my limits mentally and physically, you know, through academic disciplines, through physical disciplines, and jiu-jitsu allows you to do that in a way that's safe for the most part. You tap out, you start over, and you found that edge, you know, and that's something I want to revisit. It's one of the reasons I continue to compete. You find someone that's the same as you in terms of weight and ability level, and you pressure test those techniques, and so that keeps me coming back.
Jiu-jitsu is what I love, and jiu-jitsu, those moments where I get frustrated, I do think that I learned something from it.
If you can grab a harness on someone, it almost doesn't matter if you have hooks in. I hurt my knee this summer, and then I ended up going to Europe, and I still wanted to roll, and so I ended up rolling around it, and the best way to not get jacked up by bigger guys is just to get on their back immediately. So, and you want to stay there. So I'm going to help
I
you do
never
that today.
understood how much
First,
I love coaching.
I
Especially really love coaching my women's class, helping them to stick around, gain the same benefits, confidence, community, fitness that I've enjoyed, and just to have someone there to support them while they're going through that journey, because it can be hard.
The more and more I coach, the more and more I love it. And I love seeing my students. They're way better than me when I first started. It's kind of fucked up. Like I'm rolling with, you know, these white and yellow belts or these like green and white belts. I was like, what is going on? Like, I was like, where did you learn this stuff from? It's from me. It's like, you're doing it right. It's awesome.
That's awesome. That's a true measure of a badass coach.
I've also ended up coaching fitness, where you just see these huge transformations in people, and you see that in jiu-jitsu too, personality-wise. People, they recognize that they're supported. They recognize that this is a place where it's safe to be able to fail, safe to be able to push themselves, and it removes some limits that are present in most other places. So it's the right environment for some remarkable individual progress, and everyone's kind of working toward that end. So you see friendships and I guess changes in people that I don't think happen elsewhere.
But in the end, jiu-jitsu is what I look forward to into the day. It's my passion. I work, you know, at it every day. It's not something that I would ever quit.
And if you have a good environment where, you know, we do shelf the physical attributes and shelf the ego, then those guys come in and they have to say, wow, this is pretty impressive, that I can actually have to admit to myself I'm being controlled by a much smaller woman. And they're very technical, so I think that only lends credence to the beauty of what it is that we do on a daily basis.
And everybody is helping each other, and there's something really beautiful about that. So that's another thing I enjoy about jiu-jitsu in general.
I'm currently really missing it because of the baby, but I'm really excited to get back into it. And I'm really excited to share it with my daughters.
I've always tried to treat all my female students exactly like my male students, and I want to have an environment where everybody feels welcome and nobody gets hurt. So, you know, you want to be able to have a co-ed environment where women can walk right in off the street and train with anybody. And if they're afraid to do that, or they're getting hurt, or they're getting injured because the guys are being rough, then you know you've got some assholes on your mat, you've got a bad environment, there's no leadership, and you need to clear that out.
And so you get a much larger guy, 200 plus pounds coming in, and if he's not going to try and just run in and say grab a knee and try and run her through the wall, like pick her up and run her through the wall or something, if he tries to actually do jiu-jitsu with her, he's going to find out the difference between an SBG brown belt and a 200 plus pound white belt. You know, technically speaking, it's not even on the same planet. And there's no way you can't respect that from the level of technique and jiu-jitsu. And in some cases, you know, you get in certain positions, and even if he tried to default to that big power move, he wouldn't be able to do it. And that's impressive.
So in that sense, you know, having women in the gym, they're kind of like a canary in the coal mine, and they let you know if the environment is healthy. If there's no women on the mat, there's probably a problem with that mat. You don't want to train there as a guy or a woman.
But what I think is, again, I was saying proof positive, is that we have the guys coming in that can see for real on the mat, training with them, that, you know, the women that are in there that have gotten to whatever level that they're very proficient at that level.
It's probably the most important thing in my life, is to make sure that they grow up to not be scared, to make sure they grow up to feel self-confident, capable, like they can do anything that they want if they set their mind to it. I never want them to be put in a situation where they're at risk for being hurt in any sort of way. And so it's very important to me that they do jiu-jitsu, for one, because I want them to be able to defend themselves. Secondly, because I think the sense of competition is really important. Thirdly, you know, because of the tribe, the friendships, their lasting relationships, and also because it's their legacy, it's their father's legacy, and I want them to be able to continue it when the time comes.
Having said that, I realized as the years have gone by that you also need to have other ways for women to enter into the gym. And that's where I think having a separate women's only class, or this separate camp that they have now for women to get together and come in and train, is really beneficial, because there are some women who have never played a sport, who are not going to feel comfortable walking in the gym, no matter how nice the guys are, no matter how cool everybody is. They're not going to feel comfortable walking in the gym and training jiu-jitsu with those men. And very often, they're the women that could use jiu-jitsu the most in terms of how much it will help them, helping them learn, like we've been talking about, to be more assertive and to be able to defend themselves and just be happier people. Just all of the unbelievable benefits that everybody that has ever done jiu-jitsu realizes jiu-jitsu is awesome. And I don't want those women not to experience that because they don't want to walk into the gym. So having a separate way for them to come in, whether it's a women's only class, women's only camps, just the more doors that we have like that, the better. Because I can tell you for sure one thing, that over the years, making strong people, whether it's male or female, mentally strong people, physically strong people, making them stronger is actually pretty easy to do. Taking somebody who's not necessarily physically or mentally strong right now, who's never even known what it feels like to be strong, and helping that person become strong, that's harder, and it's also, in my opinion, for me personally, offers way more job satisfaction. And so that's what we try and do now, and that's why I think it's important, if you're a bigger club and you have the opportunity, you should always have a women's only class. Because you don't want any barriers to entry, because what we do is amazing.
This is SBG, and you will be okay.